We're gonna get everybody in. We're admitting some more people. It's fantastic to see some of you. Lisa, we got Haley, James. I love seeing you all. Haley, I can't wait to start doing some more intramurals over there. Oh, hello.
Hey.
Mallory, David, Tyler, Tommy DeGrado, Keen, Angela. I just love seeing all of your faces. You're so wonderful. Got another one, two more that are actually popping in here. I was getting ready to start it, but we're gonna let these two get chimed in before we start. We got Gina who's coming in right now. Wonderful. As a reminder, anybody who just got on, I was just kind of giving some thoughts about Zoom call etiquette, and what we like to do is we just like to ask everybody to have their microphones on mute, unless we ask you a question or something. So, friends, I am super excited to be with all of you again. You're not going to hear my voice very much longer though, because I'm about to introduce a wonderful guest speaker. Somebody who is an Iowa fan, went to the University of Iowa, recent graduate in recent few years, and he also operates a program called All Strong Iowa Fitness, and he does a lot of inclusive fitness programming and helps people of all abilities to understand the importance of fitness and how to keep your body strong and healthy and moving. And so our friend Logan Anderson, who you may already met on a few of these calls, Logan Anderson is going to take it away for us, friends. Here you go, Logan.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much. Well, it's good to be back, and it's good to see some of you guys again. I appreciate Special Olympics Iowa for, of course, letting me come back on and share some more information with you guys. I got a really good topic today, at least I think it's really good, and it's the basics of reading a nutrition label. When it comes to health and wellness, nutrition is one of the really important foundations. And a few months ago, I actually did a talk about making a performance plate for you. So that's good knowledge to have of how to actually make a performance plate. But of course, we need to get the ingredients and food to make those performance plates. So in doing so, when we're getting food from the grocery store, a lot of these foods have nutrition labels on the back of them. And when it comes to kind of understanding what's in your food and the amounts of stuff in your food, it's really important to know exactly what's in the nutrition label and how to read one. So I'm not sure exactly which page this would be on in your packet, but I believe the printout that I made should be somewhere in your page. If not, feel free to take some notes on it or just sit back and relax and just try to take maybe a couple snippets from it. So when it comes to looking at a nutrition label, I kind of broke it down into three basic parts. And that is the first part being the calories and the serving size of the nutrition label. The next portion being the actual nutrients in the item. And then the third and final portion of the nutrition label showing kind of your ingredients and what's actually in the nutrition label. So to begin, we're going to talk about what I think probably one of the most important parts of the nutrition label is the calories and the serving size. So when it comes to the nutrition label, the first thing is a big number, often seen as the calorie number. And I think that this is probably one of the most important things of the nutrition label because it tells you how much energy is in at least a specific serving of that item. Just something to remember when it comes to the big calorie number that you see on a nutrition label. This is the amount of calories in the serving of the food and not necessarily the entire bag, the entire bar, or the entire item in general. So that's a really, really important thing, and probably one of the biggest takeaways that you can take from this lesson. Know that the big calorie number isn't for the whole thing necessarily, or isn't for a serving. It's, excuse me, it is just for a serving. It isn't for the whole thing of the item. So the next thing we're going to talk about is the serving size of an actual nutrition label. So a serving size is basically what is deemed as a portion of the item. And a serving size can look a lot of different ways. In the example I put in the packets, I had peanut butter, and peanut butter uses tablespoons as a serving size. So a serving size of peanut butter is 2 tablespoons. When you're looking at a bag of chips, for example, it may say 12 chips. If you're looking at something like cookies, it could say like 2 cookies. That's the serving size. And that's also the amount of calories that is being referred to when you're looking at that big calorie number. So 1 serving is the amount of those calories. Then when we talk a little bit further, we're going to talk about the servings per item. And this is really, really important because it tells you how many of those servings or portions are in the entire bag, are in the entire bar, or just the entire item in general. So to actually find out how many calories are in an entire bag or item, you can multiply this number of servings in the item by the total calories in the bag. And that'll actually tell you how many calories are in the entire package. It just gives you a good frame of mind for if you have a chocolate bar and it says that there are 2 servings in the chocolate bar and that there are 190 calories per serving. Well, that doesn't mean that there's only 190 calories per the entire bar, since there's 2 servings. You have to multiply that number to find out that it's not 190 calories in the bar, it's actually 380. So almost double that. Just something to consider when you're kind of navigating that first portion. That was kind of a lot of info, so I'm gonna leave the floor for some questions on that first portion. If anyone has any questions on the serving size, calories, feel free to ask me.
I actually wanted to jump in real quick, Logan. I wanted to emphasize, I seriously think it's super important to understand the differences with the serving size and calories, because I think that's actually kind of tricky the way sometimes we read that. So thank you for bringing that attention to that.
Absolutely. And I will say too that for the most part, most items that you get in the store, that calorie thing that you see is not the calories in the whole thing. Often, many things you buy will have multiple servings in that item. So, really, really pay attention to that because that is super, super important. Whether you're trying to maintain your weight, lose weight, or maybe even gain some weight, calories are the most important thing, and knowing kind of the amount in that food is truly important. So.
For example, this monster right here. Oh wait, yeah. It says 230 calories for 1 can, serving size. So
Yes.
that's a serving size? How many
Yes, sir.
calories?
Yep. So usually a lot of times on sodas, they actually do have the entire thing in the can. There are bigger monsters though that I will say do have 2 servings on them. Yours is kind of a normal sized monster. That's a good example though. Yeah. Thanks for bringing that up. Most cans and like bottles of stuff, that's going to be all the calories in it. So good example. Any other questions?
Yeah, I have a question.
Sure.
So when I'm eating like at a buffet or something, it doesn't tell you like the serving size. How do you know how much you are getting from like a buffet?
So that's one of the really tricky things about eating at buffets or even eating out in general, that a lot of these places don't have, nutrition for us, to kind of look at like a nutrition label. So one thing you can do, is a lot of these places on their website, they might tell you what the nutrition is. Say Chick-fil-A, Burger King, if you're going to those places, you can find out some of their nutritional info online. However, for something like a buffet, that usually doesn't have nutritional info. So you're basically going to have to use your kind of best guess and previous knowledge of what's in other things to get you there. So, for example, in the buffet, if there's cheeseburgers and French fries and some chicken breast, what I would do is kind of take my knowledge of, if I go to McDonald's, I know getting a burger and fries is probably going to be between 400 to 600, maybe 700 calories. And that's really the best thing you can do, because other than that, we're just making educated guesses at this point. When you are eating at buffets, I would just say try to keep your portion size at a normal amount. You just don't want to go overboard. Buffets are tricky though, so.
Okay.
What about having a frappuccino?
Yeah, so similar to what James said, if you look at the back of that, likely the serving size or the serving, will just say the bottle. So anything that's like a bottle of something, a can, will likely be that will be the serving size. Does it say on the back of that?
Yeah, it says 270.
And then what does it say for the like serving size?
One serving size is one bottle for a mocha.
Yep, perfect example again. So that's an example of where one serving of that item actually is the entire item. That doesn't happen a lot when it comes to food items, but.
Oh, Logan, I have another example.
Sure.
I have this juicy juice.
Yeah, that's a big one. That's a good one.
Yeah, and then there's 8 servings per container. And then for calories, it's 120. So it has like no fat. There's 15 milligrams of sodium. And there's 29 grams of carbohydrates and 27 grams of total sugars. And then there's like no added sugars. That's like 0%. And then protein is like 0 grams. And then potassium's like 270 milligrams. And then vitamin C is like 90 milligrams.
So that's a great example. What she said there, Mallory, show that bottle to everyone. Yeah.
The nutrition facts, or?
Yeah, so that's a big bottle, right?
So anyway,
what she said.
Do you guys see the label on that?
Give me just a quick second, and I'm gonna put you on a spotlight. So let me just find you real quick, Mallory.
Okay. Thank you, Brian.
And then you can show people.
Okay.
Replace spotlight. Okay, so now you can.
So anyway, do you guys see the nutrition label on this juicy juice bottle?
So take note that that's a really big bottle. And what she said, that there were, how many servings were in it? 6?
Servings per container?
Yep.
8.
So there's 8 servings per container, and there's 120 calories per serving. As you can probably see, that big calorie number. Yeah, so to find out the calories in that whole bottle, you would have to multiply 8 by 120. So
Mhm.
if you drank that whole bottle, hypothetically, you wouldn't be getting 120 calories. You'd be getting,
Yeah.
I mean, almost, I don't even know the math, but probably close to 1,000, 800, which is a lot more than 120. So if you're really trying to monitor your weight, that's a
Mhm.
super important thing. Good example. Thanks for bringing
And
that up.
Yep. I
and
just
on
wanted to
average,
suggest you-
Logan, what is a good healthy amount of calorie consumption for an average person? What does that look like?
It really depends on your activity level.
Gotcha.
But for like usually around 2,000 for women and then 2,500 for men, if you are kind of having an average activity level, and just kind of average genetics. There's some people who will burn a lot more calories than another person and can eat a lot more and get away with it. But really, it's trial and error. Try to stick to a number for a little bit. And if you are gaining a lot of weight, it's probably a good thing to decrease a little bit. But yeah.
So in other words, drinking that entire bottle of 1,000 calories there in one day and doing that every day probably wouldn't be a wise, healthy idea. Same thing like with
Yeah,
Monster drinks and Dr.
absolutely.
Peppers and things like that. It
And
might not be wise.
And that's why fast food is so tricky, because you could go to McDonald's and get a meal that has a soda, a burger, and fries as one meal, and you could be consuming over half of the calories that you need in just one meal. So if you're doing that multiple times a day, it just goes to show you why it's so easy to gain weight and kind of stay at a healthy weight. So just something to consider.
What about if you trying to lose weight?
So if you're trying to lose weight, you just need to monitor the calories a little bit closer, and simply eating less. Definitely
And not
take
so
a look
much
at those.
bread. And not so much bread.
Not necessarily the bread itself, it's just the amount of bread.
How
If
much you usually should be looking out for?
It's hard to say based off of the rest of your diet. When it comes to losing, gaining, or maintaining weight, it's not just one item or one meal. It's everything as a whole, and that's how you should look at it. It's consistently how you are consistently eating. So I can answer questions on stuff like that further, but I'm going to keep moving just to make sure we get through some other stuff. Okay. So the calories and serving size are really, really important for kind of your overall weight. But in addition to that, the nutrients section is just as important to make sure you are getting the proper nutrients your body needs to survive, thrive, and feel good. So when it comes to the nutrients, there's a lot of different things, and the things we're going to focus on today are just kind of the bigger things. So the first one is the fat on a nutrition label, typically also seen as total fat. When it comes to fat, there's a lot of calories in fats when it comes to the amount of food you actually get to eat and consume. For example, something like peanut butter has a lot of fat in it, and a serving of peanut butter is actually very, very small. So you might consume one serving of peanut butter and it has a lot of calories in it. I do want to say that fats often get a bad reputation, and that's definitely not something we want. Fats are something that you do need to kind of keep your body healthy. It's just the amount of fat and the type of fat. So when we're talking about the type of fats that you want to look for on a nutrition label, there's a good fat, which is typically a unsaturated fat. It'll literally say unsaturated fat, or a bad fat, which is a saturated fat or a trans fat. Um, those two differences are very subtle, but just knowing that unsaturated fats are good for you and saturated fats are bad for you are kind of the main thing. Not all fats are bad, just kind of knowing that those two subtle differences. So that's kind of all with fats. The next nutrient on a nutrition label is carbohydrates, often put as total carbohydrates as well. Your carbohydrates are your energy and fuel source. Another portion of carbohydrates is also dietary fiber. This is something, if it is in a nutrition label or on a food and there is a large amount of it, that is a good thing. You want foods that are really, really high in fiber because they help keep you full, and they also help with constipation and heart health. So there's a lot of good things that fiber can give us. Know that if your food is high in fiber, something like oatmeal or whole grain bread, this will be really, really high fiber. That's a good thing. And then in addition to this, another type of carbohydrate or part of carbohydrate you might see is the sugars. Could be added sugars. Basically, what I want you to keep in mind is to limit the added sugars. So if you were looking at a fruit juice like we just saw, it'll likely say sugars, and then below it, it'll say added sugars. If something has a high amount of sugars, but doesn't have a lot of added sugars, it doesn't really make it unhealthy. For example, if you buy some fruit at the store, it might say it has a lot of sugar, but not much added sugar. The sugar is actually natural and in the fruit, and it's good for you. So don't really, kind of like with fats, not all sugars are bad for you. Some aren't added and are actually natural. The last nutrient I had is protein. And again, just like with fiber and carbohydrates, the more protein you can consume, the better. Protein is often lacking in most people's diets, and people just generally are usually lacking this. Protein really helps with feelings of fullness, and in addition to this, it also can help you build some muscle and help you perform better as an athlete. It helps with numerous other body health things as well, but just know the higher the protein, the better. When looking at a nutrition label, there are a lot of other nutrients that are on it, such as sodium, different vitamins and minerals. These are also important as well, but it'll kind of depend on what you are looking for as an individual. If you're somebody who is watching your sodium intake, it'd probably be important to look at the sodium number more closely. If you don't need to, then I would simply look at some of the fats, carbohydrates, and protein, but it'll depend on the person. That's all I had on the nutrients section. Does anyone have any questions or just any add-ons when it comes to the nutrients?
Yes.
My mind.
So I am working my hardest to get like nutrition stuff in. For the stuff that's in packaging, like the baby carrots at grocery stores or cut up vegetables at grocery stores, would those not be considered the best options, or would they still work?
Oh no, absolutely. Those are totally good options. Cutting cutting up fruits and veggies, fruits and vegetables like that make it really, really convenient to eat. So I would think that they'd be even better. And that actually brings up a good point. If you're going to the grocery store and you're getting stuff that's frozen or even canned, that stuff isn't necessarily the worst for you either. You just have to be careful of the added sugars and added butters and stuff that might be in these cans. For the most part, most canned and frozen things are totally fine. But if you're somebody who's watching your sodium, sometimes those canned things do have a little bit higher sodium. But good question. Yeah, don't stress out over it. If you're getting your veggies and fruit in from really any source, it doesn't really matter.
Like according to my can of Monster, it says that I'm getting 108% of sugar, including added sugar.
Yes.
Is that a good thing or not?
That is not a good thing. Monsters, at least the normal ones, there are zero sugar monsters, which
Yeah.
I would recommend you if you do like monsters. That's a good option to at least cut back some of the sugar. Monsters and energy drinks have a lot of sugar.
Yeah, I noticed that.
Yes.
They also have a lot of caffeine in it too.
Yes. And caffeine, you know, if you're not overdoing it, and actually some people do like taking a little bit of caffeine before they work out and have events because it can help. But um, really, the main thing that is bad in the energy drinks is the high amount of sugar, and there's a lot of just a bunch of added stuff in it to kind of make you feel hyped up. Yeah, if you think about sugar, like especially in those energy drinks and the Cokes, you can look online and it'll show you how many teaspoons of sugar are actually in one of those things. And it really puts it in perspective because it's literally like a baggie filled with sugar. And I'm sure you would never just eat a bag of sugar. So when you think about it like that, it just kind of puts it in a different perspective.
Wonderful.
Can I jump
Hey, I
in with
just
a
want to bring
question?
everybody's attention to the fact that we've got about 2 or 3 minutes. So I want to make sure Logan knows that he's answering questions and things. But if you've got anything more important
Sure.
that you need to share, then make
I
sure you
agree.
do that.
I agree. I'm gonna go through the last section real quick, which is just on ingredients. So the ingredients, you know, even though we're talking about them last, they're still just as important because they tell you how whole your food is. So when it comes to the ingredients on a nutrition label, these are going to be listed in the highest amounts to the lowest amounts. So when you read a nutrition label, if it says like sugar and then maybe there's some peanuts or a couple other things, if sugar is the first item on that nutrition label, that means that there is going to be the most amount of that item. Okay. So for that example, sugar is going to be the highest item in that thing. So if you're getting like a can of fruit and the can of fruit has sugar and then high fructose corn syrup and then pears, you know that there's just going to be a lot of sugar in it because it was the first item. Another thing to kind of keep in mind is that the less ingredients, the better. So when it comes to having a nutrition label that has a lot of different ingredients with names that are really hard to pronounce, this shows you that there's a lot of extra preservatives and additives that kind of make the food more processed and unhealthy for you. If you can find foods that have a nutrition label with very little ingredients, this is a good thing typically because it's going to be minimally processed and it's going to be more of a whole food for you. That's all I had for content. So I really appreciate the time you guys let me come on here and talk again. If you have any further questions on this type of stuff, feel free to reach out to Special Olympics Iowa. They can give you some more information on me. Also, my website, allstrongfitness.org, if you are interested more about working with me to improve your health and wellness, feel free to go check it out. I also have a lot of different social media that I post on all the time, a bunch of free, good information for all of you guys. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, wonderful rest of your weekend, and we will see you soon.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Logan. And for everybody who jumped in and participated and asked some good questions and had an opportunity to learn some good information. I did drop, if you want to check, I did drop the website for All Strong Iowa in the chat. So I'm going to leave this call open for about another 15 seconds while I chat. So if you want to click on that link, you're welcome to. But again, we appreciate, Logan, all the work that you do for just for people of all abilities across the state of Iowa in your area. And we appreciate you taking time to visit with us. So, friends, we'll see you all again sometime soon. Goodbye, everybody.
Yes.
Hi, Logan.
Bye.
Bye, guys. See you soon.
Bye.
Guys.
Bye.
Have a